Well, I'm just going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 7:02. We ain't playing around tonight. Okay, if everyone had a chance to read the minutes, I just need someone to make a motion to accept and a second.
So moved.
Ooh, who's that?
Michael started it and then Doug jumped in because you couldn't.
Okay,
hear
so
Michael,
I'll be the
he
second then.
Gotcha.
Okay, and we are now turning over to Debbie.
Okay, I'm gonna try and get my, let's see here. I want to share the screen here. Before I do that, just a couple sort of housekeeping things. I wanted to check our work plan first of all to see how we're doing schedule wise, and if we're going to make the deadlines that we set for ourselves. And it looks like we're right on schedule. We had expected to have our charter, at least in draft format, so that we could start refining it and making it exactly the way we want to introduce it. It looks like we were going to do that, finish that up around the end of June. So I think we're kind of on track to make those deadlines after tonight, depending on how far we get on the financials. We really just have sort of the public participation pieces that include initiative and referendum and those kinds of things. So we don't have a whole lot more to do after we get through this evening. The financial procedures, as boring as some of you think they are, I think they're pretty exciting, but they're probably the meat of the, charter. So the one thing I guess I wanted to double check, and Mike Foreman can probably help me out here. So the language in the Emerald Charter Act basically says that this has to be delivered to the county election board. And it says the next election 60 days after you deliver the question. But then I've seen some other places where it said 13 Tuesdays, 13 Tuesdays before. But in terms of this particular, and it's in section 2926, Michael, if you want to look there. I just wanted to make sure. I mean, we certainly don't want to miss any deadlines because this will be our last opportunity. And that makes a big difference because if it's 13 Tuesdays, we got to get it over there sometime towards the end of July. And I don't think that's right. I think it's by the end of August that we're shooting for, but
Okay,
we need to verify that.
it says in section 2926, which is called submission of question on form of government. In the essence is the commission may cause the question to be submitted to the electors at the next primary, municipal, or general election. We're in a municipal election year, so it would be municipal, occurring not less than 60 days following the filing of a copy of the commission's report with the County Board of Elections at the time the commission's report directs. So that tells me that this has to be with the county election office at least, and it says here no less than 60 days following the filing of a copy of the commission's report with the County Board of Elections. It first says that the commission if the commission recommends submitting a question, the question of adopting a home rule charter shall be submitted to the electors. The municipal clerk or secretary shall within 5 days thereafter certify a copy of your report to the County Board of Elections, which then triggers the question of adoption or rejection to be placed upon the ballot at the time as the commission specifies in its report. So and when we say report, we're talking about a final report that is a companion document to the proposed home rule charter that voters are going to say yes or no to. So we're really submitting a two-part document. One is the final report, of which the contents is spelled out in a different section of the statute, along with the proposed draft of the home rule, not draft, but the final version of the proposed home rule charter. However, once it's submitted to the county election office at least 60 days before November 2, the Government Study Commission has the opportunity to revise the final report. And I'll get to that while we're talking about the financial procedures that Debbie wants to present, that I have some comments about. But I'll get to that and chime in a little bit, just to confirm what I'm saying here.
Okay, that's helpful because again, we certainly don't want to miss any deadlines at all along the way. So, so that means if we finish in the way the our work plan set out, we finish the first draft by around the end of June. We have July to kind of refine it, to make any changes, to go over it, to do the final report. But sometime in August, we want to get it to the Board of Elections to be safe. I mean, I guess
Yes.
the drop dead date is September 3rd or September 2nd, around there, but we don't want to wait that long. We definitely want to get it there. And then that gives the commission time, and we'll work with you on this, to do the PR work, because people don't pay attention, as you know, until the 60 days or so before, the election. But you do want to have some public hearings. You want to have some pamphlets. You want to maybe have door hangers, and we can talk about all of that once we get the charter drafted. So, any questions about that? Everyone clear on that?
Okay. I'll wait to see if there's any questions, then I'll chime in about the final report.
Go ahead, Michael.
All right, in section 2922, that deals with discharge of petition and amended reports. It says that the Government Study Commission is discharged upon the filing of its report, meaning final report. But if the commission's recommendations require further procedures in the form of a referendum on the part of the electors, the commission is not discharged until the procedure has been finally concluded. Key point here. At any time prior to 60 days before the date of the referendum, the commission may modify or change any recommendation set forth in the final report by publishing an amended report. So again, at any time prior to 60 days before the date of the referendum, you can amend or modify any recommendation set forth in the final report, which really means that in essence, you could change the recommendation about what you're proposing in the home rule charter. But rarely have I seen that. And I don't want to convolute or confuse the issue here. But when a commission, go ahead.
I think that's good though, Michael, because I could envision that we would hold public hearings on the proposed charter, home rule charter, and
Right.
that some in the audience might raise a very legitimate issue that we would say, oh boy, we should change that. That doesn't need to be that way. It's not a major thing for us. And so it would give us the opportunity to change the home rule charter if something occurred in those public meetings that would give us pause to think we should do something differently.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad you said that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you folks are getting it. So yeah, so it's flexible and amendable until 60 days before the election, meaning at least 60 days. Once you submit it, it's a document that is basically cast in stone. once you submit it to the county election office, meaning it meaning the final report and the proposed charter.
That would mean we'd have public hearings before September 2nd.
Yes, we'll
What
want to
you-
schedule, yeah, we'll definitely want to schedule some probably, in July and August if we can. Once, we want to make sure it goes through all the reviews though, because the solicitor's going to review it. DCED will get a copy, obviously. We want to make sure that everybody that needs to review it reviews it before, we sort of circulate it to the public. So it'll be important to get that all done. Hi, Bonnie. I see Bonnie logged on.
Hi.
Okay, Michael, I've got to ask, I thought I understood you to say that it could be revised after we submitted it to the election bureau, but then you just said,
I know, I
It's-
stand corrected. It's
so it can't be revised once we send it to the election bureau.
correct.
It
Okay.
cannot be, yes.
It
So we
cannot.
have to get that all in, okay,
Once
Yeah,
they
so
have
we
it,
don't-
you're done.
okay, got it.
Yeah, so it's
gotta-
important, we're gonna work really hard over the next
Yeah.
couple of months to
Yeah.
make sure that it's exactly the way we want it and the final
I-
report
I-
supports it.
I apologize. I got ahead of myself. Sorry.
No, I got it now, but
Yeah.
yeah, thanks.
Bonnie confirmed it, so. Okay.
And I think we're in pretty good shape. Like I said, I think between what we do this evening and then what we're able to do by the end of June, I think we're gonna have a pretty good document. And we can work on refining anything that needs to be refined. And like I said, it needs to go to your solicitor too for review. So that's gonna be, an additional review. And you'll want her to have time to review it also.
Who is your solicitor?
Shannon Steele.
I don't know. Okay.
I
Well-
think, the firm, the steel
Well-
firm. What's the name of the firm? I forget. It's something in steel, I think. I think they do a lot of school district.
Yeah, that was, well, it's probably her dad.
Santa Cola,
There
Oh,
it is.
Santa Cola and Steel.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not gonna spend much time on the survey yet. I wanted you guys to get a sample of what it was gonna look like, what kind of information you're gonna get from it. We only had about 40 responses online. There's a few at the borough building, or city building, I'm sorry, city building, so I'll pick those up at some point. There's not a whole lot there right now, but at least you get a sample of what people are thinking. I think the comment section at the end is probably one of the most valuable ones because people that care will express, their opinion at the end of there. So anything about the survey, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because we don't have a lot of results yet.
I was encouraged. I thought that people are tracking with us, that, like number of council members, need to have a mayor. Even the taxation thing, there were a couple of comments that were indicative of really thinking about shifting from a property tax-based strong or overloaded property tax-based system. So I thought, I don't know, if it stays the way it is, I think the charter has a chance because I think we're in line with at least a significant portion of people, but we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah,
Pardon me? Oh, good. I was gonna say, the concern is I don't see the public interest. I mean, it's one thing, as Doug said about the return surveys, but whoever's completing those surveys, they're not here.
Right.
And we're gonna get to a point where we have to either educate the public that's not interested or get them copies of our proposed charter, which is just ludicrous, to be honest with you.
Bethany, does it even look like people are viewing the videos after they're posted, or have you not checked?
No, I haven't really checked, but I can look and see what nobody's really going to watch a whole meeting. They're just
No.
not. Nobody would. no matter
I
how
might just
interested they
fast
are.
forward. I mean, we could at least see if somebody just clicked on it. Can we do that? Because maybe.
We can see if somebody saw that it was there, but we can't really see if they watched the whole thing. So like if you see something has 86 views, that doesn't mean that that 86 people looked at the whole thing. They just saw it, it maybe played for a few seconds and maybe they kept scrolling. So it's really hard to tell how engaged they are unless they comment. So
Yeah, and we'll help you prepare. I prepared some things for Newcastle that were JPEG in JPEG format, just like vote yes, vote for integrity, transparency, things like that, that can be distributed pretty easily, either by Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and shared, by email and on social media. So we'll start preparing some of those things, but it's really too early. People are not going to pay attention right now. They're,
yeah, we
There
don't want to
are-
tire them out.
Oh, okay, well, as long as Deborah thinks it's a little too early, then I'll go with her.
Can you guys hear Michael?
No,
Somewhat.
What kind of response do we get on our Facebook page?
That's what we were talking about. I'm not 100% sure like what the engagement is. You can't really tell that much about it. I can look at it now. Oop. We have 9 new likes.
That's good.
People do seem to be, oops. Yeah, am I, okay, I'm not on mute. People do seem to be like weekly, there are people that are paying attention to it. We don't get a lot of engagement with any posts. We don't get, I mean, it's hard. If I weren't on the committee, I'm not sure I would be, I definitely would not be watching everything. I think once we get through everything and we know what we want to really highlight, which I think we're getting there. I mean, we're working on the survey and everything, but I mean, I think that we can make targeted posts that would say like, this is what we're talking about or whatever. And I think those may, like meme type things, I think those may get more engagement. They'd be easy to share at least.
For sure. Yeah. Right now, there's not a whole lot of content we can share that's going to get any attention or is that interesting. So we're still kind of in like a internal phase, like Debbie said, and soon we'll be able to like really, but we don't want to inundate them now because they'll get tired and then the fighting will just go longer.
I agree. I mean, I think that it's hard to engage people until we have substantive content that we actually are decided on. And then I think maybe once we get to that point, it can be a little bit more, we can have more robust conversations.
I'll show you one of the things we did stuff like this. Can you guys see this?
Beatrice.
Where we did like honor Newcastle's history, vote for a better future. We just did these little JPEGs, like I said, that you can share on social media that talks about financial accountability, tax stabilization, things like that. So that, people don't read more than a couple sentences anyway. So we decided to just share some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think this kind of thing would be very beneficial. But I think
Eye-catching.
more so than just the bullet points, I think it would be great to like even flesh those out a little bit more. Like I like that it said, like financial accountability, but say like this is how we plan to do that or whatever.
the other thing we might do, I don't know if we haven't done it yet, is WVBP.
No, we haven't gone.
Huh?
I'm waiting for Doug to go do an interview.
I was gonna say interviews are great. People do pay attention, especially when they're online and they.
Have one of us, Doug, make a statement. The committee's here. They're open to the public. This is what we're doing. It's very important you get involved. I'm Doug Carson. You can reach me.
Doesn't Matthew Dirk, remember?
Yeah, he was a student of
He
mine.
worked for WVP.
Yeah.
It'd be a good contact to set that up.
We're gonna come to the end or get close to the end, as Deborah said. And then first you're gonna hear, we didn't know nothing about that.
You're gonna do it. You're gonna hear it anyway.
I know.
No
Everybody,
matter how hard you work, you're gonna hear that. All right, we're not gonna avoid the financial procedures any longer.
We'll do that.
All living in a cave.
Okay. let me get it up on the screen. Let me make it bigger here. Okay, can people see that?
Yes.
Everyone see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think we're gonna get through it all because I think we have a lot to discuss, and like Michael said, he has some things to suggest, but we'll get through about an hour, maybe an hour's worth of it. Okay, so fiscal year, that's pretty straightforward and begins in January, ends December 31st. So the first question, in home rule charters, it obviously in the codes too, it basically says that the city manager, that there's a deadline for submitting it. So that in our charter, what I wrote was the city manager with the assistance of the chief financial officer shall submit to the council an operating budget for the fiscal year. Now we can talk about budget message in a minute, but this first part is that it's no later than November 1st. And that's probably earlier than you're used to getting it. I would guess, Doug, I think you guys work on it a little bit later than that, but this would mean that you'd really have to start preparing the budget, around September to get it to, in its pretty much final format, to be submitted to the council no later than November 1st. Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
Yes, it would be earlier than we do now, but I don't see an issue with that. We're streamlining the people involved in doing it. So I think that's good.
And that's what we see. I see in most, and in fact, I see some earlier dates in some federal charters, but I think November 1st is reasonable because that means you're basically preparing the budget in September, October, which makes sense to me.
And you have 3/4 of the fiscal year, the calendar year to work with regarding actual unaudited figures regarding what you're going to project out for the last quarter and what seems realistic for the upcoming year.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. It's a little difficult to do it before this date because you don't have 3/4 to even look at. This way you have your third quarter that you can look at. So the next one honestly can be either in the charter or you can take it out and put it in the administrative code. A lot of the charters, and I know you've looked at a few, I've looked at a few, a lot of the charters do require a budget message that must be accompany the budget and explains the budget, not only in fiscal terms, but in terms of what work is going to be accomplished based on the things that are in the budget. This says it shall describe expenditures and revenues, summarize the city's debt position, and include such other material as the city manager deems necessary. Again, it's up to you guys. I like it to be required, but I could also see it being in the administrative code instead of the charter.
I think it's a perfectly good idea.
Yep.
Great idea.
I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely gives transparency.
Yeah.
Debbie,
Okay.
does that is it implied or understood that would be a part of the public, what the public can see and access, right?
Right,
Yes.
because if you go back to the 9.2, you'll see that, once the manager submits it to council, it's a public document. So,
Right.
and we have, and I included the budget message, operating budget and the budget message in that
Yep.
first section.
Question. I noticed up at the top, it said section 8, fiscal or financial stuff, but now we're in 9's, article 8.
You're right. You're right. These should probably all be
Are they
eights.
eighths?
I
Okay,
think they're eights, and I will fix that.
no
Good
worries.
catch.
I just want to make
Yeah.
sure I'm putting it right in the minutes.
Yeah, I think when I pulled this together, I wasn't sure where it was, where the sections were gonna come together, but that's a good catch. I'll fix that.
No judges.
Okay, so this operating budget, this basically,
Wait, before you get to operating budget, I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to at least maybe give some content and context to the budget message. When I first saw this, the phrase in fiscal terms and in terms of work to be accomplished, my initial gut reaction was that seems a little vague and maybe interpretive to the extent that maybe the average reader may not understand really what that means. And so I'm just asking that it may be revisited in terms of what you're saying here about really the budget message is really a narration of the financial plan of the budget. I mean, of the city. You know, you're narrating in a budget message the proposed budget, the operating budget in terms of revenue generation, service delivery, priorities, accomplishments, from the prior year, what you hope to accomplish in the current year, coming up, the upcoming year. And I know you kind of get into that in the second sentence, but maybe I'm the only one that thinks this, but to me that the phrase, in fiscal terms, just seems a little vague.
I don't think that the term or the phrase in fiscal terms and is necessary. It can go from shall explain the budget in terms of work to be accomplished in the coming fiscal year.
yeah, I'm thinking, Michael, I like where you're going with that. I'm just wondering if that kind of detail is in the admin code instead of the charter.
That's fine that it could be in the administrative code. But I would want to put more of a fluid sentence to say that the budget message shall be required as part of the operating budget. Something to that extent where you don't have to maybe elaborate on it because the administrative code is probably the more appropriate place to give more detail of what is in a budget message, but just something to the effect that the budget message shall be required as part of the operating budget. Something like, work from there. And work to be accomplished in the coming year, just to tag that phrase onto it.
Like more.
I
Like
asked
more
her.
to me.
Is that better?
More.
Yeah, I'd make it as simple as you can make it.
Okay, so in fiscal terms and the work to be accomplished in the coming fiscal year.
Well, the way Michael Anderson suggested, the budget, I can't even talk, the budget message shall explain the budget and the work to be accomplished in the coming fiscal year. That was his suggestion,
Okay,
Yeah.
which is like, back to the less is more thing.
sure.
In fiscal terms, it's
Just,
not
just
necessary.
take it out, just take out
Okay,
terms
gotcha.
and in terms of. Shall explain the budget and the work to be accomplished.
Yeah.
Debbie,
Okay.
could you-
Better?
what the administrative code actually is and who creates it?
That is only done if the home rule charter is adopted, then that's part of our work, that we would work with the city to do the administrative code.
So this committee would do that?
It would be a committee appointed by council, which could include all or some of you members, yeah.
All right.
Because I know when I worked with other communities, some of the members in the Government Study Commission, they wanted to serve on the Administrative Code Committee, and certainly welcome that. Since you're part of the drafting, you can give more substance and content in the administrative code to the framework. of the charter.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Good content.
Okay, so we have it saying now the budget message shall be required as part of the operating budget, shall explain the budget and the work to be accomplished in the coming fiscal year. Is everyone okay with that?
Say that again?
Budget message shall be required as part of the operating budget and shall explain the budget and the work to be accomplished in the coming fiscal year.
Still seems too early.
Does that work?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The next section, which I have here is 9.4, operating budget, is basically describing what the operating budget is. It's a detailed financial plan for all city funds. And this is important because I have seen so many municipalities that do not prepare detailed budgets for their sewer funds or their capital funds or their liquid fuels funds. So this basically requires that the operating budget include all the city funds and shall be in a form acceptable to the city manager and city council. And here again, trying to simplify it, I wrote that the budget shall show in detail all estimated income, proposed tax levies, estimated expenditures, including debt service for the next fiscal year. But then the deep operating budget details will be in the administrative code. Again, I've seen too many charters that try to get really specific about what has to be in the budget. And I think that's better left to the administrative code unless you think there needs to be more direction here. And Michael, if you have comments, for sure, I know you've seen a lot of these charters.
I do, but I'll wait for members to comment first.
Does the city manager and city council have to accept this, or do they have to approve it?
Both.
Both, really. I mean, it has to be in a form that's acceptable to both the, city manager and city council, but they have to also adopt it. So both. And we'll get to the adoption process.
They can make changes to it before it's finally adopted. So it's a work in progress until it's adopted, technically. But council does approve it and adopt it, yes.
If there's multiple funds, does each one have to be voted on by council separately, or do they have to be in its entirety?
No, it can be the entire operating budget, but it should be detailed in terms of, the revenue and expenditures for each fund.
Well, since there's going to be a full-time fiscal officer, this should be doable.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? And again, this is just what is included, what is an operating budget? It's kind of a definition. What is an operating budget? Sort of at a high level, what's included in it. Any other comments?
I guess I'll go now.
Sure.
My thought, my question is, are you saying that the operating budget shall literally include all city funds, or that there should be an operating budget for all city funds? Separate fund, a separate operating budget for each of the funds. I'm not sure I know what you're trying to say, but I'm not sure what you're saying is clear in my, I guess, maybe over detailed mind. Sometimes I get too deep on this stuff, but.
Well, I think what we're doing, and maybe it does need clarified, we're basically preparing a detailed financial plan for each city fund, and that becomes the operating budget. Because
Like
those budgets
one
are
operating
all
budget,
part
one
of-
operating budget, or 4 or 5, general fund, liquid fuel, capital, for each of the funds, is it separate operating budgets for each fund? Is that really what you're trying to get at?
See, in my mind, the operating budget includes all the funds. But,
One operating budget includes all the funds.
well, the operating budget, yes, includes separate funds. Because there's a capital budget and an operating budget. And the operating budget includes all the funds because they're for the specific
And you also have
fiscal year.
enterprise funds.
Fiscal year. Yeah.
Right, proprietary funds for water, sewage, stormwater.
Right. Those
And
are all
they normally have-
operating budgets.
So you're differentiating between an operating and a capital.
Right, because the
budget.
capital is the next section.
Yeah, that's further on. I'm sorry I'm getting so
That's-
detailed and I'm getting so deep in this, but I'm just trying to make sure I understand what the language is, what you're saying here. And my approach would be that each fund has to have its own budget.
Right.
And maybe we're saying the same things in other words. So I don't want to convolute it or drag this out. So we'll just leave it as it is then.
Yeah, I mean, I can refine that a little bit.
The way I'm reading what you have there from, a non-financial background is that you have your budget and that one budget might include, like the sewer and water fund or this. So there might be different sections of the budget, but it's one document that includes all of the funds. That's
Yeah.
how I'm reading that, if that's your intention.
That's how I see the operating budget, as you just described it. But, and again, I guess in my mind, there's an
Can I
operating budget and a capital improvement budget, and they're separate. The two are separate. But I can play with that language a little bit, Michael. If everyone else is concerned about the way this reads, is it not clear?
Would it be, Michael or Mr. Foreman, would it simplify it to say detailed financial plans for all city funds?
What if we set a detailed financial budget for each city fund?
Yeah, that does
Does
the
that
same
make
thing.
it better?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's just a plural problem.
For each
And
city
take
fund?
the S off of funds. For each
I know.
city-
I'm sorry.
For
Go ahead.
each city fund.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yep,
I know I'm being real picky on here and I apologize.
it's okay.
In
Maya,
my mind,
We want to be clear. We want to
You
be,
never have to apologize. You have saved all of us over the years so many times.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
that's
In my
true.
mind, financial budget are almost synonymous. You can almost say
Let's
a
take out
detailed.
financial. Just
You,
take out a
you
detailed.
are our municipal monk.
I'll provide a
Thank you.
detailed-
Bless you, please. Bless you all. All right, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
No, I think it's much better that way. A detailed budget for each city fund. And shall be in a form acceptable to this council. Okay,
Okay.
okay. You take the highlighting off of there unless anyone has any other thoughts.
Now it's not dramatic. If you take out all,
I changed it to each.
you change one.
So each city fund would have its own detailed budget. Okay, next section, total proposed expenditures shall not exceed the total estimated revenue. And this should be for each fund. Is that,
Yeah. I'm amazed that none of the municipal codes actually say you have to have a balanced budget. They use phraseology of estimated revenues and expenditures. And
well, because when you're doing a budget, I guess they are proposed and they are estimated. So you can't really know what they are.
okay.
What if you have a fund balance carryover? How would that apply? Would you consider that revenue?
I don't, but I know some people do.
I wouldn't either.
I consider that a reserve, and some people use that reserve to balance their fiscal,
Yes.
their next year's budget.
You could
Or the
take, from-
revenue.
you could take from the reserve and your revenues would be less than your expenditures.
Right, but you have to show that in your budget. You have to show that you're spending down
Revenue.
your reserve. You're spending down your reserve from the previous year.
All
So
right.
you can do it, but you still have to show it. It still has to balance. Does that make sense?
Well, balanced budget definitely makes sense.
That's important.
So just looking at the wording, that's all.
Okay, then we're talking about also, as we go through here, a capital improvement plan. So almost every home rule charter that I've looked at includes a requirement that there be a 5-year capital improvement plan, and that is done earlier in the year than the operating budget. The reason that's done earlier is that you use that information to build your operating budget. So this almost always is required sometime in the summer before you begin your operating budget, so that you know what capital needs have to be included in your operating budget. So the way I wrote this here, again, as the city manager with the assistance of the chief financial officer shall prepare and submit to the council a 5-year capital improvement plan no later than August 1st of each fiscal year. And that capital improvement plan shall include the capital projects pending or proposed for the next 5 years, together with the estimated costs of the improvements and the method for financing those improvements. And then I added a sentence that the actual capital improvement plan shall be further detailed in the administrative code. So this is maybe, and I have to rely on Doug, this may be a new requirement for the city. That's my thought.
Yes, this would be new and it would be welcome.
I agree.
And I think it goes back to having that chief financial officer who really can, as Jerry said earlier, can make this happen.
And people put it off because they're a bit cumbersome to develop initially. But after you do your first one, you're really just pulling one more year off as 1 year drops
Right.
off. So it's just the initial, complexity of pulling the
That's
first
what,
one.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Do you really do you have to do this every year, or do you want to do it every 5 years? But I guess you're right. Once you get the first one done, then it's just.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And the thing is, so like, for instance, if you were doing one now, you would do 2022 to 3, 4, 5 to 2026 or 2027. But you would use the information in your 2022 capital plan to put into your operating budget, and then that drops off, and you add a new year. Next year you would add an additional year. So that's how they work. And I think cities in particular, with the amount of infrastructure that you have and facilities and parks and technology and vehicles, it really makes sense to have a 5-year plan about how you're going to fund this.
It's great for transparency for the residents as well. So they're not surprised by something, or they can't be surprised by something.
Well, and it forces the department directors to think about it. Because a lot of times they'll come in the middle of the year and say, oh my goodness, my truck just broke down. And it's like, well, you didn't plan for it, right? So it forces all of your departments to really think through what they're going to need over the next phase. And this is I call it a plan, and you know, you may have a capital budget that's included in the operating, because that's what you're gonna spend in that particular year. But this is really a plan, because there's flexibility in it. And, you know, some things may get funded, they drop off the plan, some new things or new regulations come into play. So this is it really is a plan. Okay. So the next section really just sets forth the idea that these are public records. And so it really identifies when are these public. So, you know, talking about having to be submitted by November 1st, that's the proposed operating budget message, capital improvement plan. They're considered public records. They need to be available in the office of the city manager or city clerk, and they should be open to public inspection during, you know, regular business hours. Now, I'm having them, so the language I put in here is that they have to be published on the city's official information site, which you could say website, but I guess that's the terminology today. Will that still be the terminology 10 years from now? Maybe there'll be some, I don't know, space thing or, you know, satellite or something. We don't know, I guess, how long the website is going to be the place for it to be. So I use the terminology, the city's official information site. If someone has a better idea, or, you know, something that they've seen that works better than that, but that's kind of what we've been using. And then also copies of the adopted budget message, capital improvement plan, once it's adopted, because there could be amendments and changes between when it's proposed and when it's adopted. So what you really want is to make sure that the adopted budget message, capital improvement plan, that those are public records, and they are also on the city's official information site. And we'll talk about advertising in a minute, because I know that that's also an issue. Well, in the codes, they have to be advertised, but we can talk about whether or not anybody reads legal ads anyway. So
I just saw that there was legislation to allow for digital forms of communication and advertising for municipalities. Do you think that'll happen anytime soon?
I'll defer to Michael, because I know it's been brought up many times.
If the newspaper lobby in Harrisburg has anything to do with it, probably not, because they want to make sure that you legally advertise the newspaper, legally advertise budgets and ordinances and the like in a newspaper of general circulation. Even though the popularity of newspapers is waning, I think they still have a voice in Harrisburg to keep the requirement in place to advertise in a newspaper. You can certainly advertise on a media website, what was the term you just used, Bethany?
A digital.
Digital,
something,
yeah.
Yeah.
Digital or a social media type. I'm so old, I can't even think of it in terms of current technology terminology. But it's certainly good to have it advertised on a website or an information site, but I'm not sure that the newspaper lobby will allow it to no longer be advertised in a newspaper of general circulation. Before we.
But Michael, with the home rule charter, you don't have to do that, right?
I think it would be a mistake not to continue to advertise in a newspaper of general circulation. Certainly promote advertisement on the website or the information site, but I'm a little hesitant because I see down here, does the city want legal advertisement as a public notice? I would think that still should be done using other mediums, of course, like a website, information site, a digital platform. I'm just trying to think of the current terminology that may have currency in 5, 10, or 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, even now, I mean, the newspapers are just getting less and less and less and less. I don't know. And a charter is difficult to amend or say as set forth in the administrative code.
Yeah, that's why this next section, I
It's-
really thought we should spend some time on, because
No.
it's not clear what the future holds and how people get their information. I
And
mean,
then, what I was finding is these newspapers knew that the municipalities were guaranteed money because they knew they were required to advertise. So then the prices kept going up and up and up. But, I mean, the Post Gazette is almost non-existent. The Trib is, on the same path. I would be really hesitant to put that in a charter and then have to amend.
What if we
Yeah.
say what a,
Or if you put it in, or, put it in and say, or the substitute, I don't know. I would be real hesitant to put that in a charter in this day and age.
could we just say as required by state? Because the state dictates how that's done, right? Not.
Well, not with the home rule community. You don't have
Okay.
to, you don't have to, I don't think you have to follow that. Maybe I'm wrong on that. but-
No, you don't have to follow them. But the problem with that too is, our state legislature sometimes is archaic. So by the time they, get their feet moving and get it up to speed, I don't know. That's just my 2 cents, because it's not easy to amend a charter. Once it's
Yeah, I mean,
adopted.
in some of them we've written in, the what Michael just said, that it has to be legally advertised in a paper of general circulation. But, like you just said, Bethany, if they change that to digital and we still have it in the charter, then we still have to do it even if they allow digital advertising. So
Right,
it is a dilemma. The way, I wrote it here is that it must be posted on the city's official information site, not less than 10 days before adoption. But I did pose the question whether or not you wanted to include legal advertisement. And that, I
Honestly,
guess,
I think in today's tenure, people are more likely to go to the municipality's website than they are to look in their newspaper for it. I don't know. Or put either or in the, make it an option that at least you're not stuck trying to amend this, the expense and effort of amending this charter at some point.
Well, I think the important, and all of you are making very good, valid points. I think the key and overarching goal here is to have a legal advertisement, and to avoid the real possibility that if you put it in a charter, it's going to become irrelevant or obsolete. The key may be to say that the city shall legally advertise the budget as provided in the city's administrative code, which could mean a digital platform, so that if it does need to be changed, you can change it by ordinance through the administrative code rather than a referendum
Yes.
by having to amend it out of a home rule charter.
Yeah.
That's
and
just something to think about.
I mean, this digital stuff is, changing daily.
see, I think it's important that it be on the city's website. I mean, I get the legal advertising, but I actually think it's a lot more important that it be posted on the city's website, because I do feel like that's where people go to look at that stuff. I know myself, when I'm working with the municipality, that's the first thing I do is go to the website, pull down the budget, and I'm always disappointed when the budget's not there.
Yeah, I like Mike's suggestion that you put it where it's in a place that's easily changed as times change.
What's
Again,
up?
the key is have a legal advertisement, a formal legal advertisement. That's the key I think you want to keep in mind.
But what does
I
that
agree
mean?
with
Is it
that.
possible to have that? Yeah, I agree with that as well. Is it possible to have, is it an advertisement that has to be sent out or distributed, or can it be like even like posted in front of the city building? You know, I mean, that's easy no matter what. And then anything else can be additional.
Yeah, I
You
guess
know, I mean,
I'm not clear what that means when you say it has to have a legal advertisement. I don't
Yeah,
know what that
that's-
means.
But that's the beauty of it. We don't have to define it.
right.
Okay,
True, but
so
somebody else
that
might
may
define
be
it
one
for
way
us.
today, and a month from now, it may be something different.
Well,
And
I
next
think,
year, just say we're gonna post a legal advertisement, period. Don't prescribe
Where?
what that,
Say where.
what method, what,
No.
how that's
Well,
gonna
see,
be done.
I
Let-
use the
No,
term
no.
public notice instead of legal advertisement. I just have the public, there has to be a public notice.
I like Mike's idea, whether you use the term legal advertisement or public notice as, and you could say legal advertisement as defined in the administrative code. And that gives you the flexibility that you need to change it with the times versus being stuck with.
That works for me.
Does everyone agree that it has to be also on the website?
Yes.
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 Okay,
Yes.
so that stays.
Now, I mean, well, I like you covered that with your term, the official information site, yes.
And can I say official, should I say official public notice instead of legal advertising? Because legal advertising can really tie you up, I'm
But
afraid.
legal,
Yeah, I agree with you, Deb. This is fine. I think we are really hung up on what used to be, you know, they called it legal advertising, so people would know to go to that section in the newspaper versus looking at the sales at Giant Eagle.
after,
But I think we're definitely getting past that.
how
So what-
about, can I make one suggestion?
Yes,
How about official public notice? And then in parentheses, put legal notice or something.
how about if I put official public notice as, why I have is set forth in the admin code. Official public notice that the proposed operating budget for the current fiscal year is available for public inspection as set forth in the administrative code. Or how about official public notice as set forth? Let me cut that. That make more sense. Official public notice as set forth in the administrative code that the proposed operating budget for the current fiscal year is available for public inspection. And just put in such notice must be posted on the city's official information site.
Yeah,
that
because
work?
the official information site could be a legal notice in the newspaper. I mean, if that's how they decide to do it, you know.
This way the city gets to decide what's the official information site.
What's their vehicle of communication, right? That gives them flexibility that we need going into the future, I think.
How about the 10 days? Does that work for everyone? Not less than 10 days?
Yes.
Yes.
I know you're gonna go crazy when I suggest this, but I just see it. If it's a public notice, then obviously it's available for public inspection. So is the part of the sentence about available for public inspection redundant?
Yes.
Well, you could say that you could have a notice that just says the budget, is on the website. Yeah, maybe not.
I don't know. It's okay. I don't think that's,
Well, I think that the notice should say it's available for inspection and where it's
I
gonna be.
see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, a public notice lays out that the budget of the city of Beaver Falls is available for public inspection. at such
Okay.
and such address during regular business hours for a 10-day period, beginning, November 20th. And council will consider adoption of such budget, at its next regularly scheduled meeting, December 1, something like that. So,
Got it. Stand corrected.
no, these are all good
No, it's
thinking
good.
questions. It's all good stuff.
Okay, so amending the budget before adoption. So basically, the budget's proposed and introduced at a public meeting. And then you can make amendments before it's adopted. So what I wrote here is the proposed operating budget shall be introduced at a public meeting of council. And then the council may make amendments to the proposed budget, provided that no amendment to the operating budget shall increase the authorized expenditures to an amount greater than the total estimated income. So a lot of the codes and charters have sort of these convoluted, in my opinion, convoluted percentages and calculations about, amending the budget. But I guess my opinion is, for what it's worth, is that as long as it hasn't been adopted yet, if you want to make amendments to it, as long as it's not greater than the estimated revenue, I think you're fine with that. But again, I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention and let them, in case there's other thoughts about that. Nothing. No one.
I feel
No
like
one-
Jerry's the one that would have something to say about this since he deals with this.
You're the money man here tonight.
See what Debbie's alluding to.
It depends on the extent of the amendments. If you have a budget sitting out there, public reviews, and then you make an amendment that greatly changes it, then public really hasn't reviewed that change.
Well, this is after it's introduced. Remember, we're introducing November 1st. We're probably not adopting till sometime in December. So we're basically saying during that period of time before it's adopted, you can make amendments, but they can't be amendments that exceed the total revenue, the total income.
Original revenue, or can you change the revenue?
Well, you can change, yeah, you can change the revenue. If you find a new revenue source of some kind, or decide to raise taxes and there's going to be additional revenue, yeah. But you cannot, you cannot amend an operating budget. It's not, I guess basically we're saying it still has to be a balanced budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't add things to the budget then that throw it out of balance.
All right.
One item that I noticed, is maybe not there and maybe it's intentional, is after a municipal election, when a new governing body sits, or the same governing body sits but is reelected, at least a portion of them, the ability to reopen the budget and revisit the appropriations and the real estate tax millage rate, that all has to be concluded by February 15 of that new year. Did you want to put something
Well,
in?
I deliberately left it in D. I deliberately left it a little more flexible than that. I basically just said that amendments after adoption,
Okay,
that the council could amend the operating budget by a majority vote of council. So
That's fine.
that
Okay.
would not preclude, any council from amending it. As
At
long
any
as it,
time.
again, as long as it falls within the estimated income.
Yeah, that sounds like at any time during the year, once it's adopted, they can revisit the budget to amend it based upon changing circumstances, supplemental appropriations, or realizing that certain revenue sources are not going to be realized, that you have to diminish the expenditures to keep the budget in balance. So yeah, okay. All right, I just want to throw
Yeah,
that.
I deliberately made it flexible in the charter. We might want to refine it in the admin code a little bit.
Yeah.
But I know that, I guess, I'll use Johnstown as a bad example. Theirs is so restrictive that even if they get a new grant, they have to reopen the budget, amend it, advertise it, and to me, that's kind of silly. If you get some windfall or some unexpected income, why not be able to amend it by a majority vote of council? I don't
So
really, yeah.
it's strictly by a vote, not a resolution or ordinance or.
I'll write it as a vote, but
Okay.
they can change,
Did I
commission can
see,
change it.
did I miss something further up that how the budget's adopted?
I think I have that.
Oh, okay, ordinance, all right. Shall adopt by ordinance the annual levy, the tax levies. That's kind of normal, but there has to be, I would suggest that there needs to be some language indicating whether it's motion, resolution, ordinance regarding adoption of budget.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Did I not put that?
Back on ordinances, when you look at that section,
Like right now, the city of Beaver Falls adopts its budget by ordinance and its millage rate. But in order to limit the cost of legal advertisements, I've seen charters say just by resolution, even though you still have to advertise the proposed budget in some format to let the public know that what it's, that it's proposed and what its amount is and, the millage rate as well. So,
That's a good point. It probably should be here under adoption. How do you want to adopt the budget? Do you want to adopt it by resolution? I think we decided under the ordinance section that it was not going to be necessary to do it by ordinance. I think it probably should be by resolution if that's,
I think at a minimum,
yeah.
because
What's everyone think?
that's stronger than a motion, more formal. Yeah, what do you folks think? Doug, Jerry?
I think I would say that this is one of the most important functions of the city government. So I think I would say, I don't want resolution. I want, what's the one that requires a second ordinance?
Ordinance,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we decided earlier on that we weren't going to do that because that means when you go to amend it, you've got to amend it by ordinance and have a
Ordinance too. Yeah, okay,
Yeah, that's how it works, yeah.
okay. I'll say then resolution.
Resolution sounds like a happy medium.
Now, again, not to convolute things, do you want one reading of the resolution before it's finally adopted, or do you want two?
I don't think in our experience, you don't have to do a second reading of a resolution.
Yeah, you don't have to do readings of resolutions, period. They can just be put on the agenda.
Right.
All right,
Yeah, and you're already going to have one meeting where you introduce the budget, right? So you're going to introduce the budget. So you'll have an opportunity then to go through it and present it. And then you'll have another opportunity when you adopt it by resolution. So that seems to me to be pretty transparent, I think.
Debbie, back when we were doing the ordinances, we had a section 3.2 that says resolution of council. And one of the items listed there is adoption of the annual budget and amendments to the budget.
That's what I thought we had done that previously.
There it says resolution.
there you go. Okay, good.
Okay. So this E, I took this from some of the other charters I saw, but it's probably open to for discussion for sure. So this says that adoption of the operating budget and any amendments shall constitute appropriations for the expenditures. So basically, this is saying that once the budget is adopted, I'll use an example of a police car. And in the budget, you have a police car in there. That they can go ahead, this actually, by adopting the budget, it's basically giving them permission to go ahead and purchase that because it does constitute an appropriation. So once it's in the budget, or sometimes, you know, some municipalities, even though it's in the budget, that doesn't mean you can go out and appropriate it. You still have to get council action of some kind for the appropriation. So there's two ways to do it. You pass the budget and then the departments can go spend their budgets, or you can have appropriations that are then approved by council, especially, you know, major purchases. So, I mean, I can take this out altogether and just make it silent until we do the admin code, or we
yeah.
can say.
I think that's better in the admin code.
Yeah, I think.
Because
I kinda
you just don't know, you have some oddball year that, oh, you budgeted for all this stuff and then the pandemic came and no tax dollars came in. But but now your police chief still wants his car. You know.
Talking about D or E?
E.
E.
E. Oh.
You're amending D, Debbie.
I know, I just put
Oh,
in
okay,
the
I'm sorry.
resolution.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I just realized.
I don't know, I would leave that E out of the charter.
I agree.
That's, I think, could end up being dangerous.
Poof, gone.
One question under this section, if I may. In the third class city codes, it doesn't allow you to go over budget on an item. If you do, you need to transfer funds from another account. Is that something that we should consider in this or not?
My preference would be to put it in the admin code,
Okay,
Yeah, it's more appropriate.
all right.
because I think you can put all kinds of rules and restrictions in the admin code. And again, they're easier to amend if they become burdensome or a problem.
Makes sense.
Let me throw out a scenario that may occur from year to year when you adopt a budget, or the opposite is that you fail to adopt the budget and the new year starts. And normally when you don't have an adopted budget, you're limited in your spending authority. So I've seen in charters that in the event that an annual budget is not adopted, the budget for the year that's ending remains in place with regard to appropriations and tax rates until such time as council is able to come up with a current budget for the year that's now in place. Just some thoughts on that.
It's probably a good
I
idea.
say admin code.
No, I think that would be better in the charter. Because that's standard. If you don't adopt a new budget, then you default back to the prior year's budget.
Right, that's what I've seen.
Yeah, and I think that's a good default, because I've had communities that went 3 and 4 years without adopting a new budget. And then they would, if there wasn't some provision like that in the code, I don't know what they would have done.
I mean, you still have the ability to make payroll.
Right, exactly. Because other than that, then you can't make expenditures.
Yeah, you've really tied your hands. And I've seen it too, unfortunately. I've seen gridlock where the council could just not come to a consensus on a budget.
I've experienced that too, Mike, and it's really, it can be crippling.
True.
So is that, I mean, I can refine this a little bit, but am I capturing, so in the event that a new budget is not adopted by December 31st of the current fiscal year, the prior year budget levels and appropriations shall continue until a new budget is adopted, something like that.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yes. Now, that's the budget itself. What about even unable to come up with a millage rate? So that would, the prior year that just ends, that millage rate would have continuous effect until such time as council adopts the current year one.
Yes,
As I say that, thank you, Bonnie. As I say that, I know that the borough code and maybe the township codes were recently amended to say that if you keep your real estate millage rate the same, where you would normally adopt it by ordinance every year, you can just adopt it by a resolution. However, if it goes up, then you have to adopt it by an ordinance. So I use that example as you know, if you want to keep a certain millage rate in place from the prior year that just ends, because you can't come up with a tax millage rate for the new year. That's, again, I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, and
That's a
if
good
you look
point.
at C down here, adoption of the tax levy,
Yeah, okay.
it says it shall be required for new taxes or increases in the rates of existing taxes. No public notice shall be necessary for the reenactment of taxes levied annually at the same rate.
yeah,
I think
that's good.
the municipal code amendments, I think, still do require a notice that it's still the same rate, but you know, with the charter, okay. You're okay with that, Bonnie? Then we can move on.
I think that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
And then up here, I have the tax ordinance. Again, it would be available for public inspection and posted on the cities. And I'll copy the same language that we used for the budget about official notice being required as set forth in the admin code. But it would be the same time frame, the 10 days.
Can I
prior
make,
to.
okay.
Sure, go ahead, Mike.
I want to make a suggestion about 9.10, the title. When I see that word limits, I get a little nervous because I think part of home rule is to not, I know some charters put in some caveats about you can only do it so much unless something happens, but I'd rather not see the word limits in there. Just you know, maybe say something of taxation, just call it taxation.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention because this is basically, this B is where you're gonna have your authority to establish your rates because it basically says, subject to the applicable provisions of law, the council in its sole discretion shall determine the rates of all taxes.
But
So
what would be the applicable provisions of law? I'm just playing devil's advocate here, like interpreting this at some point down the road.
Well,
Right.
for instance, you can't change business privilege.
Okay,
Or
There's
the
certain,
or the local services tax.
okay, yeah,
Or the,
okay.
you know,
Okay.
but you can change earned income, real estate millage, and transfer tax.
yeah, there's some that specifically prohibit.
Yeah, I think
change.
that's better, yeah, state law, you know, that, then it, I get what you're saying now, because the Home Rule Charters Act prohibits. Okay, yep, gotcha.
So that sentence may be the most important sentence in the entire charter, if you look at it, because that's basically saying that council in its sole discretion shall determine the rates of all the taxes.
Well, particularly if that's why you're doing this exercise. So, and it's a shame, because in general, I'm not a real fan of home rule charters, but I get why communities do it many times because of being able to control their tax rates.
Right.
And
Any
also
other-
to put in place a better structure regarding management and relationship with the governing body, et cetera. So,
It's just hard sometimes, and why I say that, maybe I should clarify that, is I've worked with so many that it just turned litigation. But I get why sometimes they're necessary.
Any other thoughts about the taxation piece? a really, really important part of all of this. Doug's muted.
I would say that I agree that this is really, in many ways, the heart of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And for that reason, I would say that this would be a great spot to stop.
I agree.
We've worked through a lot of minutia here, and now we're suddenly getting to kind of the meat of it. Let's start fresh on the meat at our next meeting, but it's all in our minds now. This is the biggie that everybody's going to want to know. Why are we doing this and what's going to happen? But let's not talk about it at 8:25 after we've been had our eyes crossing in all the little details. That's what I would say.
No, I totally agree. I was going to say this is a good place for us to stop and pick up next time, because I agree. There's a lot of stuff here, and we'll pick back up here. I think adopting the budget and the taxation are the meat of this entire charter. So unless anybody has an objection, I think this is a good stopping spot.
I object. I want to go. I'm filibustering.
I object,
Keep
I
going.
think I could hear. I think she's muted.
Yes.
I
can't
object,
hear
Your Honor.
her.
Yeah.
Bonnie, I think you're fired.
Well, I was just saying she's muted.
You're
Can't hear her.
muted, Bonnie. You're muted for some reason.
Oh, something's wrong with the audio.
Somebody muted you when you said that.
Bethany's gonna delete me from the meeting.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm glad your family let you back in the house, Bethany.
It got cold and my computer was about to die. I saw I had like 3 minutes left and I ran in here to plug it in.
And what,
Okay. I'm done.
I just want to know. what
Good night, everybody. Nice to
First
see
and
you. Have a
third
good
Thursday,
weekend.
every month.
So add 14 on to today's.
It's always the first Thursday and the
Whatever
third
that is.
Thursday.
All right.
So
All
just,
right. Good evening.
okay, who motioned to adjourn?
I did.
Michael
that-
Anderson, second. Neil seconded.
Great.
Good work, everybody.
Great work. You
Yeah.
guys
Thanks,
are troopers.
everyone.
You're
Good
Good
troopers.
night. Have a good weekend.
I'm sorry.
20.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.